I never thought that a romantic evening, which was supposed to be filled with laughter and sweetness, could end in such an awkward situation. When I decided to surprise my boyfriend with a little something, I had no idea that meeting his mom for the first time would turn everything upside down. My story starts with a coat, a set of lingerie, and a door opening at the wrong moment. Let me tell you what happened. On Thursday afternoon, after a long day at work, I decided to take some time for myself and prepare for the evening ahead. I had a special plan for the next night to make it even more exciting. My boyfriend and I had planned a cozy night in at his place. We would cook dinner together, watch movies, and I would spend the night. We were both really looking forward to this moment after a busy week. As I walked through the mall, my eyes were drawn to a beautiful lingerie set. A surge of excitement suddenly hit me. I thought it would be the perfect surprise for him the next night. He would definitely love it. I couldn't resist the allure of the set, so I decided to buy it, even though just thinking about wearing it for him the next evening made me excited. The next morning, I started preparing for our special evening. After finishing my work at the office, I rushed home to shower, do my hair and makeup, and get everything ready. Even though it was cold outside, I decided to wear the lingerie I had just bought, paired with knee-high boots and a long coat. I thought that even if it was cold, the surprise for him would be worth it. I imagined how amazed he would be when I walked in wearing this outfit, and I knew he wouldn't be able to take his eyes off me. Around 7 p.m., I arrived at his apartment. He had given me a key previously because we often visited each other, and he wanted me to feel comfortable coming and going. I entered without needing to announce myself, thinking he would be preparing dinner as we had planned. But when I opened the door and walked in, an unexpected scene greeted me. He wasn't alone. His mom, who lived in another state, was sitting on the couch in the living room, chatting and laughing with him. I froze at the door, not knowing what to do. I had never met his mom, and I never imagined the first time would be in such an awkward situation. For a moment, I felt breathless. My legs felt numb. He looked at me and laughed, but I could clearly see the surprise in his eyes when he realized I was standing there in practically nothing but lingerie, covered only by a coat. His mom turned to look at me, and I could see the same surprise in her eyes. I stood there frozen, unsure of what to do next. "Hi there," his mom said, trying to sound friendly, but I could tell her voice had a hint of surprise. "Why don't you take off your coat? It's so warm in here." I awkwardly smiled and replied, "Well, I'm a little cold." In that moment, the only thought running through my head was, how do I get out of this situation? I stood frozen at the door, feeling both embarrassed and unsure of what to do. In front of me was my boyfriend's mom, whom I had never met before, sitting silently on the couch, her eyes wide with surprise as she looked at me in nothing but lingerie, with only a coat covering me. Both of us just stared at each other in a long, awkward silence. I felt my face heat up with embarrassment, but I couldn't do anything except stand there trying to hide my anxiety. The tension grew even stronger as my boyfriend stood nearby trying to keep calm, but I could see the awkwardness in his eyes. He looked at me and laughed nervously, clearly not knowing how to fix this weird situation. "What's going on? Why are you standing there like that?" he asked, trying to make light of the situation. But I couldn't answer. I just awkwardly looked at him, hoping he would understand that everything had just gotten really tense. His mom, after a few moments of silence, decided to break the ice. "Hello there," she said, her voice calm but a bit unfamiliar. "Why don't you take off your coat? It's so warm in here." She asked with a hint of curiosity, but it wasn't as friendly as I had expected. At that moment, I could only smile awkwardly, trying to hide how uncomfortable I felt. I had imagined this moment of me wearing the lingerie in front of him, but never did I expect it to turn out like this. I stammered, I'm a little cold." Both of us stood there, trapped in an uncomfortable silence, neither of us knowing how to break it. I could feel his mom still staring at me, but I couldn't tell if she was confused or simply uncomfortable. My boyfriend looked at me, trying to ease the situation, but clearly he didn't know what to do either. At that point, he decided to try and make things a little lighter. "Well, I think you can take off your coat. I'll warm you up," he said, giving a light-hearted smile. Or at least, let me see what you're wearing. His words seemed to be a mix of teasing and an attempt to apologize, a way for him to ease the tension. For me, things had already gone too far. But when he looked at me and smiled, signaling for me to go ahead, I felt like I had no other choice but to comply. The whole point of wearing the lingerie was to surprise him, and no matter how awkward the situation, I still decided to let him see it. I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous it all seemed. But then, I reassured myself that at least he would understand why I did this, and maybe help me get out of this awkward moment. Just as I was about to take off my coat, there was a sudden noise. The door to his room suddenly swung open, and in an instant, his mom walked in without knocking. And that's when everything really started to spiral out of control. Before I could react, the door to his room suddenly swung open, and in an instant, his mom appeared in the doorway. I stood frozen, unable to do anything, dressed in nothing but lingerie, with only a coat covering. She stared at me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and shock. I couldn't say a word. I felt completely paralyzed. My boyfriend, who was standing nearby, also froze as if he couldn't believe what was happening. He looked at his mom, then at me, as if trying to process everything. Without a second's hesitation, his mom started yelling. "What kind of girl are you?" she screamed, pointing at me. "Why are you here, ruining our family's reputation?" My heart felt like it was being squeezed, and I could barely breathe in the suffocating tension. Everything was too overwhelming. I took a step back, feeling as though everyone's eyes were on me, judging me. My boyfriend, completely shocked, rushed over to intervene. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I told you to knock before coming in," he shouted, trying to keep calm, but I could see the anger in his eyes. He turned to me as if to reassure me that everything would be okay, but I couldn't feel anything but confusion and shame. His mom didn't stop. She continued to shout, not only blaming me but also criticizing him. "Don't you know how to teach your girlfriend? You let her stand there like this in front of me?" she said, nearly choking on her own anger. Every word felt like a knife stabbing me. I couldn't figure out how to explain myself, nor could I justify my actions in this situation. Everything became incredibly tense. I could feel not just her anger but my own, as I couldn't understand how things had escalated so quickly. I just wanted to disappear, but I couldn't do anything but stand there, feeling completely out of place. As his mom continued to berate me, my boyfriend finally yelled, "Mom, stop! This is your fault for not knocking before coming in." He stood between us, like a buffer, but you could tell he was just as exhausted by the situation. It felt like he was trying to protect me, but also couldn't stop the chaos from unfolding. I was completely overwhelmed, unable to comprehend how everything had gone so wrong. I just stood there, frozen, feeling awkward and lost. While my boyfriend said something to ease the situation, I couldn't shake off the pain and embarrassment from everything that had just happened. Eventually, to end the argument, he kicked his mom out, but the atmosphere in the room remained tense. Everything felt even more strange and uncomfortable. I felt like I had completely ruined the evening we had carefully planned. A sense of guilt and disappointment washed over me, and I couldn't find the words to say anything. After my boyfriend kicked his mom out of the house, the atmosphere in the room was still tense. Even though she had left, I still felt like I had just weathered a storm. I stood there in silence, unsure of what to do next. Guilt and embarrassment still weighed heavily on me. Everything I had imagined for the night had turned into chaos. He sat down on the couch, his eyes still full of worry. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, but I could still sense the tension. I gave him a weak smile, trying to shake off the suffocating feeling in my chest. Honestly, I didn't know how to respond, because even I couldn't make sense of what had just happened. "I'm sorry about my mom," he said, his head lowered as if feeling guilty. I didn't know she would barge in like that. I really didn't think things would get so out of hand. His voice was quieter, almost like he was also processing the shock. I looked at him, trying to force a smile, but failing. "I understand, but honestly, I didn't know what to do either. It was my first time meeting her, and I never imagined things would get so awkward." My voice wavered, even though I knew he wasn't blaming me. But the feeling of being unable to control the situation made me uncomfortable. He sat in silence for a moment before standing up and walking toward me. Don't worry, it's not your fault. I know this was a really awkward situation, but we're still here together, he said, holding my hand, trying to comfort me. But despite his gesture, I couldn't shake the sense of emptiness. There were so many things I couldn't fix. He continued explaining about his mom, saying she was always very strict and often interfered in his relationships. She has really high expectations for any girl I'm with, but I didn't think she would react so harshly with you, he said. I nodded, trying to push back the whirlwind of emotions inside, but a sense of insecurity began to grow. I didn't know how this would affect our relationship. Honestly, I couldn't stop wondering how his mom would react to me in the future. Could I overcome these challenges and keep this relationship intact? We sat in silence for a while, neither of us saying anything. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall filled the air, making everything feel even heavier. Eventually, I decided to stand up, trying to shake off the overwhelming thoughts in my head, and I smiled at him. I'm fine. We can still do something to forget about this, right? I tried to lighten the mood again, but I still felt a large, unfillable emptiness inside me. He looked at me and smiled faintly, though I could tell he wasn't entirely at ease. I really hope everything will be fine. What about you? Do you still want to continue with the night? He asked, but I could see he wasn't as enthusiastic as he had been before. The awkwardness and worry still hung over us, as if everything had become too complicated to go back to how it was before. I tried to create a comfortable atmosphere again, but everything still felt too tense. We sat down on the couch, neither of us saying anything for a long while. I could feel the awkwardness between us. While my boyfriend kept trying to make me feel better, I couldn't shake the sense of disappointment and emptiness. Everything felt so difficult to continue when the shame still clung to me. I knew it wasn't just me. He felt uncomfortable too, as his eyes revealed his own worries. I looked into his eyes and tried to smile. Hey, I think we need to talk, I said. I decided we couldn't let everything continue in silence because I felt like there were so many things we both wanted to say but didn't know how. He looked at me, a little surprised, but nodded in agreement. I understand, he said, sighing. My mom isn't easy to deal with, but I think we can work this out. I'll do whatever it takes to make everything okay. His voice was full of determination, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy. The anxiety in my chest didn't ease. I had been thinking about this all night. Would this affect our relationship? But I really feel uncomfortable, I admitted. She seems to not like me from the first time we met. I'm afraid she'll always be against us. I looked at him, my voice full of insecurity. Can I even stay here if she keeps looking at me this way? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, as if thinking carefully. A minute later, he sighed and said, You know, my mom, she might not like anyone the first time she meets them, but I believe she'll understand if we talk to her. You're important to me, and I can't let my mom come between us. Even though he said that, I still felt something was off. Could things really be as easy as he thought? Despite his determination, I couldn't stop feeling doubtful. I didn't want to be the one always worrying about conflicts with his mom. We sat in silence for a while, occasionally meeting each other's eyes, but neither of us said anything more. Although he kept trying to reassure me, I felt like everything wasn't over yet. The tension in the room just wouldn't go away completely. After a long while, he stood up and walked over to the table in the living room where we had some snacks prepared. Are you hungry? He asked, trying to change the subject and ease the mood. I nodded, but the discomfort still lingered. We ate quietly, and everything seemed to pass in a kind of hollow stillness. The evening I had been looking forward to had turned into one of those memories I just wanted to forget, but couldn't. I couldn't stop thinking about his mom, the things she had said, and the feeling that I couldn't change anything in this relationship. Could I get past these challenges and continue with him, or was this the sign of an inevitable ending?